Good morning everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
We're great.
Great! Excellent. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today about a powerful concept that will transform the way you communicate with others. And not just the way you communicate, but also the way you understand people. So who here has had an experience where you just didn't seem to get through to somebody? No matter how brilliant your communication was, no matter how well you put your words, they just didn't seem to understand you. Has anyone had that experience? Yeah, thank you. How about a time when you meet someone, perhaps even for the first time, or you don't even know them that well, and it's like everything just flows, you just click, and it's like you've known each other for years and you have a fantastic conversation. Has anyone had an experience like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but maybe not so much. Okay, thank you. Wouldn't it be great to have that experience all the time, whenever you chose? You were able to connect with people at a level that they really understood you, and they really understood what it was you were trying to say. How good would that be? Who'd like that?
Me.
Great, thank you. Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how we can really connect with people. Jim Rohn once said that great communication is all very well, but flexible and honest and open communication creates magic. I love that quote. And I love the concept that just through the way we communicate, we can create magic. And when we communicate, we're not just downloading information to each other, we're actually connecting at a level that we can understand each other and create and solve problems as well, create problems as well, but solve problems. Albert Einstein once said that we cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. Now I love this quote because what it means is that we have problems in our lives all the time, and the way we solve them requires a different level of thinking to what actually created it, which means that if we change our level of thinking, we can change the way we see the world and we can essentially solve problems. Dr. Alan Watkins is a psychologist in the UK and he's a peak performance trainer of Olympic athletes and also executives. He talks about the importance of changing the context of the way we think. Not just changing the way we think, but just changing one thing and it can change everything about our world. I was in a workshop a couple of months ago and the sponsor, who's the person who's in charge of the project, stood up to communicate his dream to the organisation of what he wanted to change and what that would mean to his business and the organisation. He was right in the middle of a visionary statement when someone interrupted and asked him when system testing would start for release 2.A or whatever. The sponsor was quite stunned, and I realised then that the sponsor was talking at a very high level of vision and this person was in the detail. Now, neither person was wrong, but isn't it interesting that you've got two people in the same workshop that have essentially the same motive and the same idea, yet they were talking in almost completely different languages. So my role as the facilitator was to say, oh my God, and then wonder how is it that I can make each person understand each other. And my role was to bring them together to realise that they were in the room for the same reason. And my ability to do that, to be able to help them understand each other, was critical to the success of the project. And when we do our projects, I guess when we consider change, we must be able to communicate on the same level. John Cotter, who's a change expert, well-renowned writer about organisational change, actually said that the number one way to create amazing change and be successful at it is to have a compelling story. I love that when you think about it because it's so simple. He's not talking about metrics, he's not talking about percentages, he's talking about the importance of having a story, which made me think of a workshop I did only last week. And it was a bit of a disaster to start with, to be honest. It took almost half an hour to get the technology right. The video conference between New York, London, Sydney and Melbourne was intermittent at best, and we kept losing pictures of people, and then we lost sound. And then the sound came back in a resounding whee that burned everyone's eardrums out. It was really nearing a disaster, and I thought about calling it off. It was very early in the morning Australia time, and it was late in the afternoon New York time, and I knew that people really wanted to get on and do other things. Anyway, half an hour of messing around, we eventually started the workshop. I introduced everybody very quickly so we could just get on with talking about what it was that we were there to achieve, and then I handed over to the sponsor. And when the sponsor took over, he had a really interesting approach. Instead of getting straight into the importance of the project and what he wanted, he actually utilised our experience. he started off by saying, thank you, yes, we'll actually get back to that. He started off by saying, isn't it interesting? And he referred very much to our experience in the room, and that was, it's taken us over 21 minutes, he'd actually timed it, to get the technology right. We are a global organisation, and the purpose of us being here today is to become one. And if we can't get our technology right, that's a symbol of how far we have to go in becoming a global organisation. So the success of this project is so important, because when we succeed, it means that we are global and we can work together. And I loved what he did, because he took our current experience that we'd all experienced and we all understood and turned it into the reason and the driver behind the project. He put the project in terms that everyone could understand. And his ability to actually bring that compelling story and then bring the project to life was really powerful. It meant that the rest of the workshop went really well. We all understood exactly what it was we needed to do, because we changed the way we thought in terms of just thinking about what it is we needed to do the project and put it in terms of a story, in terms of how we could work together. And I really love that. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, is how we can do that too, how we can change the way we think in order to really connect with people and get across what we need to communicate in ways that not only we understand, but other people can understand. There was a study done at a prison a couple of years ago, and they studied parole hearings, and they studied whether judges were being fair when they were issuing parole. The initial going-in position was that some of the judges were being racist, and they were actually not letting off people of Hispanic origin. The study actually looked at the numbers and saw that a large amount of Hispanic people were not being given parole where the other races were. Then they changed their thinking, and instead of looking at it from a race perspective, they started looking at the timing. They started looking at the timing of when the parole hearings were happening. So they looked at parole hearings that happened just after 9 in the morning, late in the morning, early afternoon, and late afternoon, and the figures were interesting. What they found was that the majority of parole hearings that were positive in favour of the prisoner were happening straight after 9 o'clock in the morning, and also straight after lunch. How amazing is that? So what does that teach us? Well, it teaches me that if I ever go to prison, I'm going to bribe my way into getting a parole hearing straight after breakfast or lunch. No, that's not the point. What it teaches us is that by changing the way we think about a problem, we can get a completely different result. And what they actually found out was the judges were victims of what they call decision fatigue. And this is fatigue that comes as a result of not having enough nutrition, that you might make decisions that you might not favour. And when you do have nutrition and you're full of sugar and you're content, you're able to make decisions that are maybe more measured, maybe more balanced, or maybe more favourable. So isn't that amazing? So they just took the same problem and thought about it at a different level, and they got a completely different result. And this wasn't just a result for communication, for the jail, but it's a result for prisoners, for people's lives. And that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail today, is how we can change our level of thinking, increase our flexibility of thought, and get different and get better results. Now, the concept I want to talk to you about today is called the hierarchy of ideas. Now, the hierarchy of ideas is a model that increases our flexibility of thought. Now, when we increase our flexibility of thought, we have a bigger range of options in front of us. So one option is okay, but not really an option. 2 options is a dilemma, but 3 or more, imagine the possibilities. So the hierarchy of ideas comes from a concept of the law of cybernetics called the law of requisite variety. Now, the law of requisite variety states that the person in the system that has the most flexibility controls the system. So what that means is the more flexibility you have, the more control you have. So when you think about that in terms of the way we communicate with each other, the more flexibility you can have in a conversation, in an interaction, in a workshop, in a meeting, the more control that you can have, and ultimately the better results you can have. Now, would anyone like to see how this works?
Yes.
Yeah, great, thank you. Well, let's get straight into it. Right, the hierarchy of ideas has 3 main steps. They are chunking up, chunking down, and chunking across. Now, let's start with chunking up. Now, the purpose of chunking up is to increase the level of ambiguity in the conversation. And when we increase the level of ambiguity, we're more likely to get agreement because we're talking about a higher level intention that more people can get behind. For instance, a vision for a company can be very ambiguous, but ultimately everyone will agree on it. Once you get into specifics, that's when people diverge. So the purpose of this is understanding our outcomes in terms of our end game and be able to agree on that. So chunking up is really important. Now the way you chunk up is to ask questions. So the sort of questions you ask are, for what purpose? What is the intention of this? What outcome are you looking for? What is the end game? These chunk you up to a level of intention that people can agree on and understand each other. So it's a really important thing, chunking up. Are there any questions about chunking up?
No.
Great, thank you. All right, well, let's move on to chunking down. So the purpose of chunking down is to get into the specifics. So we all know it's all very well to have a vision, but sometimes we look at visions and we're like, well, what does that mean for me? So the purpose of chunking down is to get to the details, it's to get to the implementation. And all of us involved in communications, change and projects understand the importance of the specifics of implementation. So the way we do that is to ask questions again, but this time we're being more specific. What specifically? How specifically? When specifically? Who specifically? So going back to my example of the workshop, my sponsor had chunked up quite high, yet the person asking the question about system testing was asking the specifics. So again, both looking at the same outcome, but they're looking at it from different ways. So that's chunking down. Did anyone have any questions about chunking down? Are you ready to move to the third and final step, chunking across?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, now this is great because when you chunk across, you increase your flexibility of thought. As I said before, one option isn't really an option, two options is more of a dilemma, yet three or more, you suddenly have a whole bunch more flexibility. So it's really important to increase your flexibility of thought because once you have options, there's so many other ways you can do something, which has got to be a great solution for everyone. So chunking across, we ask questions again, but this time we're asking what else, how else? Questions that open up the neural pathways, and simply the action of asking what else forces you to think that there is something else. So it opens up a neural pathway of possibility. And when you have a pathway of possibility, just thinking or wondering whether there is something else opens up that possibility of the fact that there could be something else. So a really powerful thing, and again, just asking what else, even if you don't think that there is another what else, it's a very powerful way of wondering, just wondering whether there is something else. So that's chunking across. Did anyone have any questions about chunking across? Okay, are we ready to have a bit of play with this?
Sure.
Okay, so pick a topic, anything.
Drugs in sport.
Drugs in sport, interesting and very controversial and quite current at the moment. Okay, let's go with drugs in sport. Let's start by chunking up. What's the purpose of drugs in sport?
To win?
To win, okay. So what is the intention of winning?
Money, power,
Power?
fame.
Wonderful. And what would all that give you?
Money, power, fame.
Yeah.
Fame.
Money, power, fame. So we started with the concept of drugs in sport and we ended up with money, power and fame. Quite high level things really that you can possibly achieve by other things other than drugs in sport, would you say?
Yes.
So drugs in sport is an example of a way to win. So when we talk about a way to win, I'll go to chunking down next. So drugs in sport, what specifically do you mean about drugs in sport? So we're chunking down now. What specific drugs, for instance?
Illegal ones?
Illegal ones? Okay,
Yeah.
and when would you take them?
Well, training or about to compete or something.
Okay, and how would you take them?
All sorts of different ways, I guess.
Yep, so maybe injecting them, taking them as pills, things like that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we're really getting down into the specifics now. We could probably spend a bit more time talking about the specific drug, when you would take it, even who you would get it from. So that's chunking down drugs in sport. Okay, so coming back, drugs in sport is another way to win, as you say. What are other options? So say you really want to win and get that money and power and fame. What are other ways, other things that you could do apart from take drugs?
Train.
Train, yeah. Okay, what else?
Attack the other team.
Okay, another good option. What else?
Go into another sport where you're better.
Yeah, great. What else?
Win lotto.
Win lotto? Great. See, already we've increased our flexibility of thought. So suddenly drugs and sport isn't our only option if we want to win our power and our fame. What do you think? What do you think of this model?
Sounds good.
Okay, let's think of something else. What's another thing? Cars. That's a great one. Thank you. Good one. So cars. So what's the purpose of a car?
Mobility.
Mobility. Okay, and when you have mobility, what does that give you?
Choices.
Yeah.
Choices.
Freedom.
And what does that give you? What's the outcome?
Ease of travel. Ease of
Yeah.
go wherever you want.
Okay, great. So we're really up there now with ease of travel, freedom. So a really high level intention of a car. Okay, when you think about a car, what car specifically do you think about?
Subaru VX.
Subaru VX? Great. And what colour is it?
Probably metallic blue.
Okay. And what's the interior look like?
Dark grey.
Dark grey?
Charcoal.
Okay, great. And what are the specifics about the car? Like where are you driving it?
Wherever I want to go.
Wherever you want to go. All right. Okay, so now you can see we're really getting into the specifics of this particular car. And we could ask a lot more questions to really get to the detail of who owns it, where did you buy it, etc. So let's chunk across a bit now. So a car is an example of transport. So what other options of transport do you have apart from a car?
Public transport.
Public transport, good one. Okay, what else?
Bicycle.
Bicycle, yeah, great.
Scooter.
Scooter, yeah. What else?
Motorbike.
Motorbike, great.
Walking.
Walking, great.
Not leaving the house.
Again, another option. So you see, Hannah, what we've done is we've expanded our area of thought. We've thought about not just the car, but everything that it gives you, specifics about the car, and all the other options that are available to us for transport. So we're going to go break shortly into an exercise. We're going to break into groups of 3, and we're going to have a play with this. We're going to practice navigating the hierarchy, chunking up, chunking down, and chunking across. So I'm going to let you go and do that now. Welcome back. Thank you for participating in the exercise. I loved your energy. What did you learn? What did you notice? And what would you like to share?
That it's really hard to chunk up when you're focused a lot on the chunking down side of it.
It's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that, because when you think about it, we all operate at a certain area of the hierarchy in relative comfort, and when we stretch out of that, that can actually be quite challenging. So what do you think that you could take away from that now that you know where you're most comfortable and where you are challenged?
That I might start with chunking down and then chunk up.
Okay, great. That's something you can take away. That's wonderful. And I want you to really take this away and have a play with it, and really experience what it's like to talk to people when they're either chunking up and chunking down and chunking across. I personally like to use this in workshops and map a sort of mental map of where everyone sits on the hierarchy depending upon what they say. So when you listen to somebody who's chunking quite high, they're going to be using really big visionary words like freedom and experience, really high level words, so you know that's where they are. Then you'll hear the people in the specifics. And the idea is to understand where everyone sits so you're better able to navigate your way around it. So I look forward to hearing about your experiences as you navigate the hierarchy, and I'd love to hear about your success, not only in your own communications, because remember it's more than that. When we communicate with others, it's not just about getting our point across, it's really about truly connecting, and as Jim Rohn said, it's about creating magic. And when we create that magic in our lives, we're more likely to be able to not just get along with others, but really connect and understand each other. So thank you so much for listening today. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your experiences and sharing with you even more communication concepts. Thanks very much.